Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor for AUV World. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here to talk about episode 6. It hurts my heart that we're more than halfway through the season. It doesn't feel right, but it's been a lot, honestly. Like, whoever gets the win, I know we had questions about that. I feel like they've earned it because it's crazy to think they've only been to 4 tribal councils each. It feels like we've lived lives. And this episode was a lot. To talk about it, I have Mr. Tuesday. He is not the Kirby to my poverty. Let's not do that. Sari and poverty, I'm not having. Maybe the Lisa to my Sari again. The Lisa to my Cass. It's a great Mike Bloom. Mike, thank you for being here.
Let's do the cast to my endurance challenges. That seems to be the most solid pair in the season so far. Mr. Tuesday, I love this nickname. This sounds like a steeless DC supervillain.
That's true. I'm like, what day is it? But yeah, I couldn't give it blank to my blank because all of the pairings are so messed up. And let's talk about this episode because what just happened? Like that
this
was
is why
so
we can't
chaotic.
have nice things, Shannon. We had the Survivor Twitter-coded Alliance Black Widow Brigade 3.0. Can't believe we were in a season where there were 2 Black Widow Brigade alliances happening simultaneously. But as Robert Frost once said, nothing gold can stay. And we got rid of the golden god, so it only makes sense that the gold loses its value in this particular episode. As you have Parvati and Kirby obviously being the main breakup. You have Suri and Parvati being in sort of different directions. Obviously, Shawnee is going to break off from that group entirely and vote against Suri. I mean, again, this is why I like being Mr. Tuesday, I suppose, is that we can talk about the entire week as a whole. And what a fun, as much as I don't like the 3-episode-a-week schedule for this particular season because it feels like we're flying through it so fast, we do get a nice self-contained narrative where you have Kirby and Parvati next to each other at that endurance challenge in episode 4, being like, okay, I was eyeing you across the bar. You're the one. I want to work with you. We finally see it come to fruition in episode 5, and then it breaks apart all too soon in episode 6. Do you love fast, you love hard. Things tend to move pretty quickly in that regard.
Yeah, it's like if everyone's a Black Widow Brigade, no one's a Black Widow Brigade. If it's an all women's alliance and it's all women in the season, then it becomes irrelevant. And it's hard because you can't be the Luke to my Janine because they voted in different directions. I still have questions about that. You can't be the Kirby to my Shawnee because Shawnee turned, I think, seemingly on Kirby before Sari was the name that was put out there. This was hard because coming out of the merge, it was complicated in that we had voting blocks, right? We had like Luke and Janine. We had Shawnee and Kirby, we had Parvati and Suri, and we had the internationals. I kind of end up calling the internationals the worlds, even though, but anyway, to be easy, they're the worlds. 3 of those 4 groups are in strife at best. Luke and Janine divided and conquered too well. Too much division. In what world is Luke not on the Janine voting with Janine? Then Parvati and Suri continue what we said was the theme of the season yesterday in allies with misaligned interests being pushed past their comfort because they're close to each other, but they have these misaligned interests. And we saw that with, we've seen that with everyone. We saw that with Kirby and Sarah, doom them both. Now they're both a jury villa. We have seen that Suri is a lot more set on the worlds, and Parvati was a lot more set on Kirby. And here, push had to come to shove for one of them. And then the Kirby-Shawnee pair speaks for itself. And I've been through this episode a couple of times. I think I get what happened for most of it.
Yeah.
But the 2 questions that I really do not understand, and maybe you can explain it to me, is how Luke and Janine didn't get back on the same page was something Luke clearly would have been fine to do.
Yes.
And secondly, what was Shawnee doing? What was Shawnee doing?
Move. I mean, I think what this is all going to come down to, and the reason why Kirby goes the way that she did, is something that George is going to reference the last time you and I spoke, which is a bit of big move-itis. And I do think that this is yet another week where we can, again, look back and talk about the fact that maybe the 3 people that were booted this week were taken out due to not being able to, again, necessarily change their own stripes within this different environment. Obviously, Kirby, who absolutely killed the game last time by doing things that, again, should not have worked 9 out of 10 times. We found the one time where it didn't work, that she is cutting people who are close to her off at the knees, somehow not reaping any sort of repercussions for it, that she's somehow able to just amass the numbers and continue business as usual. Clearly not this case. We could talk about the fact that so much of that, I think, depends on, if you don't know a lot about Kirby, you just go off of what happened in this season. And if you find out what happened in this season, then yeah, maybe you are a bit leery of Kirby. Sarah, you've talked a bunch about how despite her wanting to come in and say, yes, I want to play a change game, she ultimately ends up going because she does, end up having her hands in a bit too many different alliances, speaking badly about one of them. Tony, you could argue again, maybe a little bit of a different story, but he is somebody who we've seen many times when he's cornered, likes to get aggressive, likes to get a little confrontational, likes to pull things out of his bag of tricks. And that is something that may have led to Suri and Parvati ultimately not flipping the tie. Again, it's a little bit more of a apples and oranges.
Tony was screwed from the jump. Yeah.
To address your first question, I have two possible explanations. One is that they really want to keep this undercover for some reason. I mean, we don't get any to what people perceive about these two. But it does seem like, again, this whole narrative from Luke's perspective especially is like how blindsided he has been.
Yes.
Basically every tribal council he's been to, right? Except for the George tribal council. And even then, right? Because then he's like, hey, vote for Shawnee. He's like, okay. So I call it like blindsided adjacent.
Well, he was on the split, but I guess he has technically never voted correctly in this game.
Which is wild to say.
Splits count. He got 3 Jizzy points that episode, but it's true. We do come back from we start every episode with Luke being blindsided and like reacting to it. But nothing is better than Curbs got toasted, goddamn. That was my favorite one. But
yeah, that was so good. Again, like I don't want him to necessarily be in the minority, but it is really fun and not repetitive at all at this point from my perspective to like say, all right, it's the beginning of the episode. You know what we're coming back to. It's the Luke reaction cam as he's going to break down how in the dark he was this entire time. I mean, it could be something where did Janine want to leave him out because she senses that he was closer to Kirby? Because again, we see, at least from the edit perspective, that Luke is the one that is espousing more like, okay, Kirby thinks that she can, string us along, and she seems to be the one that's approaching him more than Janine. The other explanation, Occam's razor, could have been, if they are rushing to get stuff together before the vote happens, they just might not have been able to talk to one another. But even then, I'm trying to remember, were they were sitting next to each other at tribal council, right?
I don't remember now.
I'll check back really quick. Yeah.
But okay, I love that you're coming in with theories, and every time I'm like, no, it's not that. I mean, look, I don't think that it's that Luke wouldn't be okay with Kirby, because I think Luke goes to give the name of Kirby to the worlds, and then it's like, yeah, we could do Kirby, and then kind of floats through. It's like maybe we don't go with an Australian, even though they're so done with Kirby, which we did predict.
Yeah, which is wild that they're like, screw nationalism, burn Australia to the ground. Also, like, can we get rid of like Lisa or Kirby? I mean, sorry, Lisa or Suri at this point.
Yeah, but he is fine with Kirby. Like, I think he'd be into it. I think it is what you said, like Occam's razor. Maybe they don't have the time. Maybe it just was, look, we're going to find a crack between the two of us. Like, you're taking one side, I'm taking the other. Like, we'll get it done. And maybe it just, again, didn't become relevant to inform Luke when they had the numbers. It is interesting because Luke goes to the worlds and gives him a very bad name in Suri, which was a kind of a theme of this episode of bad names, mostly Lisa and Suri being given to each other. And then Janine goes to like the Suri Parvati side, and going through Suri, she gets to the world. So what I actually think was the crux of this episode was Suri and Lisa. And there were these moments when Suri's name is given to Lisa, and we see the look on her face. And that could be edited, but I like to believe it. And then we get the same thing with Lisa and Suri, and it could have gone very badly because Luke comes and says they're saying your name. Now, he doesn't say who they is. That's technically Suri's group. And we don't know the order things are really in, but we see that Kirby and Parvati are talking about it. Kirby gives it to Luke. Luke gives it to Lisa. That could be heartbreaking for Lisa. Like, wait, Suri is on my name? And then she says yes. I'm like, this is going to be like a Romeo and Juliet thing. Like, I came for you because you were coming to me. No, I actually didn't kill myself, etc. That's what happens in that, right? So I thought that might happen. And then what happens is then Suri gets the name Lisa. We see she doesn't like it. She immediately turns it away from Lisa. She talks to Janine. She gets it on Kirby, and Janine gets it on Kirby. And she immediately protects Lisa. And the best thing about it is that Cass, Lisa, and Suri have a conversation. They're immediately honest with each other. We do not get this misconnection issue where Lisa thinks Suri was coming for her, and then is she coming for Suri? They're honest with each other, and they get to consolidate as this group. And I think that the group that comes out of this is Suri in the Worlds. That's been Suri's priority. She's wanted that. It's been bigger for her than Kirby and Shani. Obviously, that's a disaster. But Parvati is out on the Worlds completely. She's wanting to target Cass. And I know that Janine gave her an excuse, but I feel like she was like, Janine could be playing me, but also was looking for any excuse. Like, she's ready to come for Cass. She's not been talking to the Worlds. Like, she's so out. Whereas Suri has said her priority is the World. She's been so into it. And I think that this consolidated that. She brings a Janine. That becomes a majority. Parvati's not a part of that at all. She gets dragged along, I think, against her will. Where the only thing she could do is
it's very much a like, hey,
idol.
you could be in on this vote. You know, it's happening with or without you. So either jump on, you know, continue your own sterling voting record, or maybe try to throw a vote away and, you know, try to, you know, get away with your promise to Kirby. Though we'll get into it. I think if Parvati makes it to the end, I don't think it's a done deal that Kirby won't vote for her, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, Kirby loves and respects the game, I think.
She voted for Ferris.
I think
after she just talked in this episode about, like, Ferris, he's so despondent when he didn't use his idol on me. I want to talk about that as well. But yeah, going back to that, I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that, you know, despite the fact the World has won these past 2 votes, they lost the fire-making battle, but they have won the war so far. You know, they are a very tenuous 5, and it's because, you know, if the 5 stick through, the 3 Worlds would arguably be the majority. Parvati senses that, like, okay, they would come for me, so I don't want to go through with that. For Suri, it's like, no, I think I could swing Lisa, or at least I know I'm protected because I have Lisa, so I'm more inclined to stick with them. And yeah, I agree with you that I think a lot of this is going to come down to, from all sides, the fact that in a game like this, be it Survivor, be it Big Brother, what have you, like, when you are asked for a name, the choice of the name you pick means a lot more than you think. Again, like, we'll talk about this. I don't know why Luke floated out Suri instead of Parvati. If it was Parvati, like, for all we know, I mean, they don't know that she has an idol, but, like, it could have gone through. You know, maybe the Worlds would have hopped on board for whatever reason, but because Luke mentioned that very specific name, then it's like, okay, no. That's the last straw. We're not doing that. And then it causes the Worlds to stick together for this one more. Or should I say again, the Worlds plus Suri?
Well, Suri is a big part of that. I mean, I think Luke doesn't give Parvati because Shawnee's not going to do that. Shawnee's a big part of that. She probably tells Luke what name she's okay with, which is Kirby and Suri. And I think a big part of this season, and certainly this vote, is just protection. You know, like, Lisa and Suri are looking out for each other, and they have enough numbers to get off that name. Parvati has that as well, and that Suri will look out for Parvati, and Shani will look out for Parvati, but Kirby lost that. You know, Kirby lost 3 Australian allies last night in one go, and Shani was unforeseeable. Shani turning is not on her, but then she wasn't investing in the Worlds, and she was just really investing in Parvati. So at that point, there was nothing Parvati could do, so she didn't have that investment. So I think it is interesting to see. We've seen this back and forth. It's been so interesting to be the theme of the season. It's been, we had it with Suri and Parvati before, in the way they were going with, like, Tony and the internationals, but Suri's investment has always been the internationals. Yesterday, she pushed them past their comfort. Tell me when you've seen that before. I do believe it was a split, even though even now, like, Tommy says, well done, and Luke says to Lisa, like, they were both blindsided. I think they're leaning into that. I'm sure it was a split, but it wasn't what they wanted to do. Parvati continues to make them uncomfortable. She's not talking to them. It's too real. It's like, oh, I don't want them to know we're close. It's like, but you're also happy to target Cass, but you also don't give Cass the immunity you promised her when it's the last 2 of you left. Like, there's too much actually there. It feels like when Cochrane was the mole and then, like, actually became the mole, which is always a danger. So they're not feeling comforted by that. But Suri wants to consolidate that. Suri was forced to go against really her priority yesterday because Parvati won that war. But today, Suri won. And now Parvati is not in a great spot. Like, now she has Suri. She doesn't have Luke and Janine. Janine kind of was giving us a bit, like, not huge.
Yeah, I mean, no, Janine
doesn't
and
have
Suri,
the Worlds.
Janine and Suri were the ones that agreed to never write each other's name down, not Janine and Parvati. That should be saying something.
Janine was trying a bit. And Shani was willing to turn on Kirby and Suri. Like, that is actually not the Shanten people want, Shani, like, for you to turn on Suri. So Parvati's been left a little bit alone here, I think, in a way that's not good. But I think that Suri and Parvati's relationship, this, like, multi-decade relationship, is so interesting because they have been misaligned, and we're seeing it here. And how much further can they go on together when Suri's priority is the Worlds and Parvati's been so out on the Worlds? And that's the breaking point of what I think has been a kind of long discord between them in this season. And where does that go? when they're so close and clearly connected to each other, but everything else around them is so different, I think, from each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes this so great is that despite the fact that, the prediction we all have come in with, which is like Parvati and Suri are thick as thieves, has come to fruition, and I would argue is the most important dynamic in this game so far. They are two individually minded people. And I am curious from Suri's perspective, we really haven't gotten a lot of would Suri want to take Parvati to the end? And while I do think this is a really good move for Suri, despite the fact that, it does expose her closest ally and maybe her by proxy, I could certainly see a moment next episode, and we'll see it on the next time on, where it's like, hey, let's split our votes between Parvati and Suri. If Parvati has an idol, which Suri probably knows about this point, and she plays it, Suri goes there. I think for her, if she was forecasting the internet's favorite alliance indeed carrying through the day if Shawnee does not go rogue, like either A, Parvati could easily prefer to take Kirby over Suri because Parvati knows Suri's resume. It happened once before, even though Amanda was the deciding vote there in Micronesia. And B, there's a good chance that Kirby would want to get Suri out because this idea of like, no, I want Parvati all to myself. This is something that's out of the classic Kirby playbook. So again, in an episode that is all themed about get someone before they get you, that makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, going back to my initial point, Parvati brings up in this episode, like, yeah, listen, I don't care who I sit at the end with, as long as I sit in the end. That makes sense because I would imagine at this point you would get a lot of votes if you were sitting at the end, even just based on reputation alone.
Yeah.
So that from that perspective, I do feel like we're missing a very key POV as to obviously Suri is doing a lot of things in conjunction with Parvati. This is one of the rare times where their paths diverge from a huge capacity to the point where Suri kind of brings Parvati in late. Does she want to make it to that final three with her again? Or is she someone that she's going to have to inevitably cut?
Well, what's the first thing we hear from Suri in this season? That Parvati won her season. And they haven't played Survivor together since then. Obviously, Suri doesn't make it to that point criminally in Heroes versus Villains. So I do think that she needs to get one over. I think she feels she's owed one, and she is. She's owed like 5, and the traders didn't do enough to make it up. So I do think that's why it's her priority. When you have like a Lisa, who I think is more loyal and without kind of that baggage, you see why she goes in that direction. So I think there's been this discord, and I obviously think Shawnee was a lot more clearly a lot more loyal to Parvati. So there's discord there, and Kirby was like almost solely invested in Parvati, even though we saw those relationships with Suri as well. So I think that it is quite different. But I wanted to talk about, we talked about the Kirby playbook. Can I defend Kirby for a second? Because
okay.
Isolating her number one by taking out their ally, like, well, not a number one, but like taking out like Eileen to get to Ferris, like that type of thing, that is in the Kirby playbook. Voting out her number one is not in the Kirby playbook. She has a reputation here that has been so unfair. She never voted out Rihanna. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
true.
And,
it's very George-esque, right? Of like, when she is loyal to you, she is loyal to you.
Yeah, and I think that she's gone out of her way to invest in Shawnee, seemingly to her detriment, shockingly. I think the thing with her is just that she and Sarah were just not it. They were not it. They were not a good relationship. Like all of the discord was saying in a relationship between Suri and Parvati, that's a multi-decade relationship. It's a stronger relationship, and it's less out of sorts and taking and like a slower burn to that. Then Sarah and Kirby, who just started working together and had all of this and more, 10 times this from the very beginning, like it was such an uncomfortable relationship, and it just doomed them both. It was the reason Sarah went home, and ironically, it was probably part of the reason that Kirby went home, because then she took that shot and she was more isolated, and in some way she got that reputation, which seems unfair. So it is interesting. I don't think there is a jury villa. I didn't see Sarah's tonight, but I would love to see the two of them at Jury Villa. I hope they're okay because I love them both.
I hope Sarah greeted her with the song straight out of that 2017. I guess it was 2017 did the raps, right, with the Jury Villa. In 2019, I remember they sang "Sweet Caroline." Yeah, I mean, it is.
Should we write it?
We could listen if you want to bring a wand off into AU versus the world. I feel like this is.
I don't know if I can do it to Sweet Caroline. You made your bed, bum bum bum. Look who's at Ponderosa now.
That feels like more of a comment on their
It's
cleanliness habits, considering that Ponderosa is all about them lying in a bed and dirtying it up. Like, oh, you made your bed, congratulations.
No,
Yeah,
like hope you have regrets. Bum bum. That's it.
I
Imagine how
do.
mean that would be.
I
Someone
mean, that
walks
would
into
be
Jury Villa and it's
incredible.
just
It's like,
like,
hey, I
yeah,
have a song for you in like Taylor Swift style, just burning them the entire time.
yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think
You could
about.
do a lot of Taylor Swift songs for what Sarah, I'm sure, wants to say to Kirby.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
knew you were trouble when you walked in.
There you go. Bad blood, to
Shame on
say the least.
me. Yeah.
I do think that I feel like not since like Josh and Jeremy in Blood versus Water in San Juan del Sur have we really seen like such huge evidence of like I got rid of this person. It directly affected my own boot as well because
David, maybe?
yeah, that could be. Oh yeah, I mean yeah, you could do
Yeah,
Sean and
Sarah was.
David.
Yeah.
But I do
Well,
think
there was more
that
rivals. They were both more rivals than this. Like,
yeah,
I don't think
exactly.
Sarah was as much Kirby's rival as Kirby was thinking. But I will
No, I mean,
find
I
out
think
in
it
the
was. I
end.
think it was this matter of like she had again. It was confirmation bias, right? That she'd already kind of gotten a sense that like Sarah was kind of pulling away from her. Sarah also subsequently talked about the Romeo and Juliet was like, I feel weird because sounds like she's pulling away from me, so I'm gonna pull away from her. And Kirby's like, but now Sarah feels like she's pulling away from me. But I think that what it comes down to is, I'll sort of use a personal, analogy here because again, they used this analogy throughout the past two episodes. Kirby even says, like, I feel like a jealous girlfriend. If you if someone is going through their second marriage and you are their new spouse and you hear like, oh, what happened in your first marriage? It's like, yeah, well, I found something out about them and so I just had to break it off immediately. Or even to use like a non-romantic example, say you apply for a job for a certain position. They're like, yeah, the last person that we put in this position, after a while, we just had to get rid of them. It just seemed like it wasn't a good fit. You're liable to feel a certain way, especially again, when you don't know them from a hole in the wall, when you have had probably 3 conversations with them tops over the past couple days. And I feel like, unfortunately, I agree. This is not a good episode for Parvati, even starting with Janine putting the cast bug in her ear, where it just seems like, again, it's confirmation bias from Parvati's perspective that I think she has certain suspicions about people so that even if it's just a complete fabrication in the case of the cats thing, when someone comes to you and says, oh yeah, somebody said this, it's like, of course they would. All right. In this case, the devil you don't know is better than the devil you know, I suppose.
Well, Parvati's been very paranoid because she is the biggest target. She's always like, are they talking about me? It's like, actually, no one is Parvati, but I see why you think that they are. I feel like, I mean, if I were Kirby, I would have said, do you remember Rihanna though? Because that was like the 40-something day
and then Parvati
relationship.
would say, no, I don't know who that is.
And she would say, let me paint you a picture. It was to death. Till death do us part, okay? Sarah and I were the problem. This relationship was the issue. Like, if you were to come into a romantic relationship or even a job, right? And it was like, my record speaks for itself. I'm a brilliant partner. I'm a brilliant employer, whatever. But this one thing was like clearly not the one.
Yeah.
Surely, like, it really was just Sarah and Kirby, and that's actually not Kirby at all. But anyway, at that point, I do think it's a bit overstated because that's obviously what Parvati says is the reason. But what's Parvati going to do? She's going to play an idol on Kirby and vote for Lisa. And then it's a Lisa tie.
Was it?
And Suri will go home.
Suri
will go home. It would be what?
It's something out of the Miles playbook, right? Of like, you're an outsider, you're going home. Let me play this idol on you to make you feel indebted to me.
Miles won in a very specific way. I think it's unicorn-like in its own way to reference someone from this week going home. But yeah, I think Suri goes home. That I was actually really worried. I was really worried that she would do that because I was like, Suri would go home. Because who would vote? Like she would. So Janine would vote for Lisa. Parvati would vote for Lisa. But Cass, Tommy, clearly Shawnee and Luke already. That's already 4 votes. Would vote for Suri and TBD on Kirby. Like she would have idled out Suri. And that's also a crazy thing to do, to hold on to one ally who I do think was a good ally for her. Like she doesn't want to lose Kirby here, and she shouldn't want to lose Kirby here. But like she's brought in as a 6th vote. So of 9, like it's done. There's a majority.
Exactly. I think again, we don't know the timing of things, but I feel like the way Suri approached her with it, like again, it wasn't necessarily a collaborative decision to be made for kind of once in this game. It was more so hey, the train's leaving the station. You could try to wait for the next one, but that train might hit you if you're standing in the middle of the track. So like get on board at this point. And Yeah, I do agree. And I think maybe as unfair as it might be to Kirby's reputation, I think that Parvati is almost preemptively spinning a narrative that she could give in a final tribal council setting as well. If and when, if she does get there, if Kirby's like, hey, I was the most hurt out of all the votes I participated in my Survivor career, Parvati. I was most hurt by you. Explain yourself to me. Parvati could easily just set up the idea, almost like Todd-esque, right? Of like, I saw what happened with Sarah and I was going to get you before you got me. And it's not like, again, as unfair as it is to Kirby from an external perspective, that is the internal narrative.
It's so unfair.
Perception is
Kirby was
reality in
going to the
Survivor.
end.
But it's not like Sarah's gonna speak up unless they have these like real come to Jesus moments in Ponderosa. She's not gonna speak up and be like, actually, that's not true. Like, you see Sarah on the jury reacting to the talk about that last tribal council. So yeah, I think that Kirby going here, I mean, it is quite shocking. I didn't necessarily peg Kirby as, on paper, as someone who can make it to the end again based on the way she was playing up to this point, just because, again, it was so fast. But again, I was thinking, why should I doubt her? She was able to make a deep cut the last time out. But I think this just goes to show that, again, I think this also could have been something that, where the lack of connections was working against her, right? Like, if she had someone from her season there, or someone she was close to, they could vouch for her and be like, okay, that was a one-time situation. That's very different than what she's done before. She doesn't necessarily have that to speak of. And so you could argue that one of the things working against her from the initial part of the game comes back to bite her in her last days in the game.
I will argue that, actually, because I think that that's not really what happened, because the Kirby thing is that everyone wants to work with her. Like, everyone. Like you in her first season, at the swap, at the actual vote, but then at the Rebels camp, as an example, everyone wants to work with her, and she throws those decoy votes and she starts putting people off. And that is actually what happened here. Like, everyone wanted to work with her more than people they had played with, more than people they had known for decades, in like absurd ways. She had those connections more than anyone, but she actively lost Luke and Janine, two people who a couple of episodes ago, rejected Sarah, who Luke has played with before, to work with Kirby and to do something that actually ended up blowing up the tribe in a way that was bad. Like, Sarah obviously did this. Shawnee worked with her until she didn't, and we'll talk about it. Unforeseeable, very confusing. But I feel like a lot of that is on Kirby, but that's the way Kirby plays. Like, she has so much social capital, but this is what we've always said, but she spends it so recklessly. And sometimes that's a wonderful purchase, and sometimes she goes a little bit into debt. And I think she was in a little bit of that debt because she'd made so many big moves and they'd be somewhat destructive, and she'd lost relationships, and then she didn't have enough capital. It was just really Parvati that she'd invested in, and she didn't have enough to protect her. And I think that's what happened. But the thing with Kirby is, like, it's going to go one of two ways. Even last night when I was like, I'm so worried for Kirby, I felt like she was at the door, but then I also felt of my draft team, she was like my most likely winner. That's Kirby. It's very rare to find someone who redefines a medium 25 years into this franchise. We do get it. They cast well across the globe, but Kirby as a player and a character has done that. To have Suri Field say that Kirby's a genius, she's scared of Kirby, to have Parvati say, if Kirby goes in, I'm the biggest threat. Parvati's saying that, like, what an honor. And I think the thing with Kirby as well, and I want to say this, is that I wasn't giving her enough credit last week when I spoke to Rob about, like, well, the thing that all these people have, Shawnee and Kirby, is that they just care less, like, they're not the Brandon Donlands on the ladder because that means so much to them. They're not in an exit interview with Tony freaking dying. They have more decorum than the rest of us. And while that is true, and Kirby is a cool, calm, and collective, as Rodney would say, person, I think it was Rodney, Kirby cares. She doesn't care for 15 years of investment, and she's not dying on a mat or something, like Andy style. All my friends, they're all similar. But she cares new. She's learnt to care. And she played this game over a year, and we watched her over a year and a half fall in love with this game. And what a privilege it has been. And to see her go and be so gutted was hard to see, because I love Kirby and I don't want her to feel that way.
That was wild. I mean, compare like the first time she went out, right? Where, again, despite how she's vocalizing how betrayed she felt by Ferris, like, she's all smiles, gives everyone hugs on the way out. Like, she snubs Parvati as she makes a beeline for Luke.
Well, like, she was on her last legs in Titans v Rebels. She'd won challenges to, to even get to where she was, because she'd been such a clear, obvious threat. Here it's a blind side. And here she has the legs taken out from under her, and here she is shattered. And it's hard to see, but it's also really beautiful because I'm like, oh Kirby, you've been hurt by this game and you've fallen in love with this game. And let me tell you, as someone who loves it, part of loving it is being hurt by it. And I'm not even playing it. But that's just true. Like, so much of Survivor is that it's powerful because it can make you feel. And if it can't make you feel, what is the point? It's about the ugly victories and the beautiful defeats. It's about the exquisite pain. And Kirby felt that. I bet this loss in this way and that pain and that heartbreak makes her love it even more. That's the beauty of the game. It's the highs and the lows and the brilliance of that. And to see Kirby's journey, and I hope we see much more of it, but to see her journey over the last year and a half from that to learn the beauty of this game and to get to that point, that's part of the beauty. It's the worst part. But it's a part of it that's very powerful, and that spoke to me in Kirby going home in that way.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, as Inside Out teaches us, you cannot fully envelop the entirety of the human experience without incorporating the sadness as well as the joy and perhaps the anger as well, considering, how she snubbed Parvati on the way up. But I completely co-sign everything that you so beautifully said. I mean, I think Kirby is such a great example when it comes to this fandom of quite literally better late than never, that I think sometimes people cast aspersions on those who do not know the show as much. But I do think there is so much beauty in the game of soccer. It makes me cry, but also in the idea that people who don't know the show come in and just like 25 years ago become completely, I don't know, like immersed in it, not only from a day-to-day experience, but also like realizing how exhilarating it is to be able to be at the top one day and the bottom the next. And I think what you talk about with Kirby and Shawnee, what's so interesting about them is like, just because they're not sort of like career Survivor fans doesn't mean that they don't lock in once their feet hit the sand. Kirby certainly proves that she's like, yeah, I don't really know a lot of these people, both personally and from a, historical background, but like, that's not going to keep me from playing as hard as I do. And so if we were to see a Kirby 3.0, I'd be incredibly intrigued to see what it would be, because Tyson talks about this all the time, that, when winners come back to play, it is a humbling experience because they've never experienced being blindsided before. Kirby didn't win, but as you mentioned, the first time out was far from a blindside. It was very much a, like, again, why I think she was pouring it on a bit thick with Parvati of like, why I'm so broken? It's because Ferris snubbed me. I thought he plays idle on me. Like, no, that was clearly the last gasp of a dying horse. But I do think that if she were to come in for a third season, would she see the warning signs more clearly? Would this cause her to be a little less hands-on? Because at least from our perspective, the edit was personifying it as like, Kirby kept trying to check in with Parvati, being like, we're good, right? We're good, right? What's interesting is Parvati never had a confessional being like, Kirby's too much, which also leads me to say, as we memorialize her, she has to be one of the most charismatic contestants I can think of in recent memory. Again, it is something that we are not able to see. The social game, with the exception of Shawnee's edit, is so tough to personify in these shows. But like 2 seasons now, we have had basically an entire cast filled with people that are like, God, there's something about Kirby that, despite everything she's done up to this point, makes me want to work with her. I think the Sarah Lucina comparisons, especially from a Game Changers perspective, were really on point. We saw it happen again in Winners of War, despite that reputation. So, like, I feel like the 1-for-1 is continuing through her second season here.
I mean, if you don't see it on the screen, and I think you can see it a lot more than Sarah Lucina, to be honest. But like, I mean, I've met Kirby, and it's palpable. And I think you can see it. I mean, the chemistry and the like, what I called the charisma plosion in Dondi between like the Davids and the Parvatis, not Parvati and Kirby. We had Parvati and Rob. I'm like, these are the most charismatic people in the world. And that's what we've got together here. And we've literally congregated those people. Kirby has that. If she were to play again, it would be interesting to see if she tries to pull back, play against her base instincts, which are always to go for it. She goes at 100. She wants to do it for the fun of it because she loves it. And now she's found out it's not so fun on the other side.
She says, screw shield. She's going onto the battlefield, throwing the shield aside, shedding the armor, being like, it's just going to weigh me down, and holds her sword aloft and runs into it. I know that Daenerys compared her. I'm sorry, Parvati compared herself to Daenerys. Kirby is full Dothraki, full Unsullied, like barely wears any armor, just relies on her own set of skills to make sure she doesn't die.
I'll take your word for it. I've never seen Game of Thrones. I know. Is that Game of Thrones? No.
It is
What
Game of
is
Thrones.
it? Okay.
Yeah, it's Game of Thrones. Parvati does refer to herself as Khaleesi, which is the
Yeah, that one
title
I
that the
know.
Dothraki give Daenerys. But yes, it's one and the same.
Okay. Well, I think that for Kirby, like she plays with her heart on her sleeve. Like she plays so open. She makes big moves. She like again doesn't overthink it. Like she like plays so hard and then she fell so hard. And like I said at the beginning of the week, I think it was that she could go home tomorrow, which she didn't. I think it was two nights later. And she would still have quadrupled my already high estimations
Yeah,
of her through this season. And that is true because to see the way that she escalated her own reputation above some of these icons when she was the most recent player speaks for itself. And I know that, she comes ninth and that's not like in a 14-person season, but we've lived lives, okay? But it feels like, I don't know, we've seen it. We've seen the power. We've now seen it twice. I'm impressed.
yeah.
And I'd love to see what she continues to learn. And I'm so grateful that Kirby's learned to love our game and that we have
Yeah.
her. And that I'm grateful when anyone learns to love our game. But we're very lucky to have Kirby in that club.
We got to talk about the other parties here, Shannon. Can we
My
finally,
gosh.
35 minutes in, give Janine her juiced flowers? She juiced up the strategy in this episode.
She juiced up. We got to do better than that. We got to do better than that. I should be doing.
Oh, you know, I say she gave it a boost.
juice
She gave her,
puns.
yeah, I would say she
You
gave
gave it
her
a boost. That's
standings a
better.
boost.
I was gonna say it was like an all-berry bang. She made some mango magic, like the
Ooh, I
actual,
like that.
the actual boost juice puns. For the non-Australians, it's confusing. Clearly, those are juices. Janine was great, Janine. But why? But why was Luke not involved? We'll get past it. I love the way that she connected with Suri. I like the way that she
Yes.
connected with Parvati. She put out the name Kirby. She did that. She was happy to go with that. She actually gave a good name, which was a theme in this episode that people were not giving good names. People were not reading that correctly, and people were not happy with what they were hearing, and then they were going back on it. So that was very good. I think Janine did very well. I still think that this behooves Suri more and the worlds more, but Janine adds to that, and I think she did the most to get it done. But I still think that they benefit the most. But like Janine's not going home and she's not on the bottom, which she could have been, so she did very well.
I mean, all that matters for her at this point is she was not in direct danger. I agree with all the plans floating about, but like she's thinking long game, right? Again, as a businesswoman, very proud to do so. She wants to make long-term investments, not try to like throw out these short returns that just sputter out after a little while. And so I loved this scene between her and Suri because it's a perfect example of laying down these seeds that Janine knew exactly what to tell Suri in that moment. Suri was giddy when it seemed like, because my impression is that she had these reservations about Kirby. She's trying to tell Parvati. Parvati's having none of it because the two of them are sort of like in lovebird honeymoon phase at this point. And so Suri's looking for some sort of outlet. She's not going to go to Shawnee because Shawnee, she's been told, is close to Kirby. So she can't be like, hey, isn't Kirby kind of shady at this point? So when someone approaches her from the Australian perspective and tells her what she's been thinking this entire time, it is such a bridge for her. And while I do agree that, like, Suri and the Worlds had sort of been building this coalition to begin with, Janine being on board gives them the freedom to really pursue this idea because then they know they have 5. 5 out of 9 is enough, barring an idol. So I think this was the crux of the plan, that considering how separated things were last time, I don't know if Suri thought that she could get one of Janine or Luke over by herself. So to have Janine come to her, connect with her, and be like, hey, just so you know, this is what happened with Kirby previously. Just look out for it. It was, again, a fantastic example of confirmation bias. And I do feel like, I don't know, Janine has really shot up in my estimates, over the past couple episodes where, exactly. Where she is really making a name for herself. They throw shots and juice if you want to for an extra charge. And she has charged up her game. Because I do feel like maybe I'm just being sort of tricked by the edit, but it did seem going into the merge that she was sort of personified as like, all right, the second banana to Luke, much like a banana you could throw inside any of your local.
There's a banana juice that I can't. I'm going to Google it.
Exactly. But I do think that she has showcased the individual merits of her game. And I do think people were excited to see her, but I think compared to a lot of the other multi-time legends around her, maybe she had one of the lowest stocks besides Sarah going into this season, but she proved again why she is the why she took the godmother nickname that Harry threw at her feet and took it and ran with it. Because honestly, this might be, besides, helping flip Abby towards the beginning of Champions versus Contenders too, like one of the most impressive moves I've seen her do in her season and a half so far. And just being able to, again, as you mentioned, in an environment, in a day that is full of people giving others the wrong names and try to cobble plans together that clearly others are not hopping on board with, she approaches the exact right person at the exact right time with the exact same name. And
Yep.
lo and behold, not only did they leave the conversation on the same page, Suri has now found maybe another connection to go to as well outside of Lisa.
Google saying banana buzz. I don't get banana
Ooh.
juices. That's not for me. So I didn't know the name of the banana juice. Yeah, what was interesting about this was that the catalyst was Suri hearing Lisa. It wasn't even Suri at that point hearing her own name, because how's that going to get to her? She did hear it, but then it was like that also, if Janine Janine's not even part of that, even though she should be. And if she would have reported, it would throw Luke under the bus, even though it is good for her to hear that Shawnee's doing that. And this is why this is so complicated. But yeah, in protecting Lisa, look, Janine giving a good name is the only one who did that in this whole episode, with a name that people actually wanted. So like, like Kirby went and gave Lisa to the Australians. They didn't like that. No one was liking the name. So for her to do that, you're right, it was the perfect pitch at the perfect time, which actually is ideal. People should not forget that she's the godmother. No one in the season should forget that they were chosen for a reason. Like when Luke calls Lisa small fish, she won. She won the game. She was a good winner. Janine is a godmother. Like,
to be fair, Luke does not remember the country that Lisa is from, so clearly he's not a big fan of.
He watched her season. He covered it with me. He covered the penultimate episode, so we must have had to watch a lot of the season because we did the.
Yeah, but don't you remember his world tour when he's like, "I'm going to Canada. I'm going to Finland. I'm going to whatever country the other one is from." He didn't even remember Lisa's name. He called her the other one.
The upsetting part about that is how little that podcast meant to Luke to do with me, because he watched her season.
Did this mean nothing to you?
Literally, clearly it did. And the funny thing about it is that in the preseason, I'm like, oh, Luke knows Lisa's game because we covered that season. Luke doesn't remember that we did that. It's very upsetting for me. That meant a lot to me. Yeah, so I think we don't forget that Janine's the godmother. Everyone wants to find their fodder because that's what these leaders do. No one is fodder. Janine certainly isn't fodder. That's the freaking godmother. So I think that was a good reminder. I have questions. Shawnee, what happened? You explained to me what Shawnee did in this episode, because I think it was big move-itis. I can't see another way that it's not big move-itis.
Yeah, the Shawnee merge edit. I know we're only a couple of votes into the post-merge, but really confounds me. Like, it almost seems like once she got rid of David, once she got rid of George, like things kind of fell off a cliff, where it's like, okay, she got her revenge. She clipped George before he reached 90 and before he reached 100 days. Now she could sort of like settle on her laurels, but clearly that is not the case, as we see that she's brought in as sort of like Kirby's close with her. And again, it seems like from a personality perspective, as a lot of us surmised going into this season, her and Parvati from a personality perspective are thick as thieves. I mean, maybe to your point, that's a reason why she wants to vote off Suri instead of Parvati. But I don't understand why she feels the need to turn instantaneously. Like, you could argue, and we certainly did at this time last week, going into what we thought was the double tribal of like, okay, Shawnee might have relations with Luke and Janine, considering that they played around the same time. But also, we saw that Shawnee has perhaps the biggest axe to grind of the Australians against Luke and Janine for writing down her name. So unless she really wanted to do like, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, and try to bring them on board for something, this just came out of nowhere. Under no circumstances did we really see any sort of like dissatisfaction that Shawnee had with this quartet, and especially with Suri, to warrant her. Yeah, and Kirby, to warrant going to Luke and being like, we could ditch that right now. I had a good thing going, but I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Well, she's happy to be with Parvati, but that's being a terrible ally to Parvati. See, and the thing that's crazy to me is I think that if she can get votes on a World Tribe member, and Cass is kind of the target, but if Cass wins immunity, maybe Elisa or Tommy, I think she's in one of the best positions. She's got Kirby as a bit of a shield. She's the one who has to be the conduit to the Australians. She has to be the connector. They're pissed off at Kirby. They come in and they're out on Kirby. If she can come and manage that and be like, Luke and Janine, I know that was bad for, we left you out of that, but we actually just got new allies. There was a method to our madness. Now we're going to bring them in and take out a world and actually do that and bring in a Luke, Janine, herself, Kirby, Parvati, who clearly would have done it. Again, like, she doesn't know if Janine's telling the truth, but she's itching to take out a Cass. And I know the Cass winning immunity maybe changes that, but maybe you weaken a Cass, and you take out.
I was gonna ask, not to derail things too much. What do you think would have happened if Cass lost immunity? Do you think that like the momentum was starting so much, from Janine and Parvati before the challenge that it's just open and shut, the foursome stick together alongside Luke and Janine and take out Cass?
Well, I don't, for the reason of Shawnee. Shawnee is like such an unreliable element in this, because I think anyway, so say Cass is like, firstly, say Cass is out of the equation. I still think if you have the 4 Australians and Parvati, now it's flipped. Now instead of Suri saying to Parvati, I have 5, you're a 6, what you gonna do? Parvati is to Suri, like, we're in this together, right? You're the 6, what you gonna do? And I don't know what she does for Lisa there, but she can't actually do anything, and it might be a flipped version of this kind of upsetting betrayal that we see from Parvati to Kirby and Suri to Lisa. Now, if Cass is an option, because Cass has been like a juicy target, I watched enough Survivor Quebec to know she's amazing at endurance. Okay, I reported on that fact, and I've improved.
I mean, that is, she, as these people were, going through it, as Luke once again seems like he's going through one of those social experiments where they hook men up to these sensations of giving birth, and he's just going through the labor pains, quite literally. Like, it's a day at the beach for Cass.
She's just so much birth recently.
I know.
Every challenge is like he's giving birth, I assume.
Yeah, Cass called it from the challenge at the beginning of this batch of episodes. Yeah. So to have Cass standing there so nonchalantly, to where Parvati, who is gunning for Cass, has to drop out of the challenge because she's like, Cass, you doing okay? And Cass is like basically looking at her nails, saying, yeah, it's fine, I'm good. Like, she is a monster. Maybe it goes to show, like, again, we could talk about next week, and especially what those previews mean as to, like, could the world tribe be splitting apart? Like, there's a chance that Cass might need to use that idol sooner rather than later.
Well, I barely watched the previews because it felt like a lot, and I hate when they're at tribal council and I'm like covering it because I don't want to see necklaces. I'm not going to lie to you. I barely watched the preview. Cass is great, especially at the weight challenges. I think it was the Loved Ones challenge in Quebec where she won by holding up like the typical, like holding up the weight challenge. She's really good at that. So if Cass doesn't win immunity, say Parvati wins it, and she comes second, is she a juicy enough target to stop Shawnee going rogue? And at that point, is it and Shawnee with Luke? Maybe. And then is Janine happy to hop on board with that, because we saw that as well. So then maybe there's like a cohesive group there, Janine working with Parvati and them all bringing it together. I can't say that though, because I don't know why Shawnee did what she did. So I don't know if Cass is a juicy enough target to stop her from doing the crazy thing, because I don't understand the crazy thing. So I don't know that I can say that. I don't know if that's enough to pull Shawnee back to what should behoove her anyway. Because if Cass is immune, Lisa going is still good. And actually good to keep Cass as a target and then have your cake and eat it too, and then choose between the Australians and then maybe cut into this group at a later date. But that's not what Shawnee wanted to do. And what connections did she expect to have? She goes to the world to immediately discard her and gives them a name that she can't read because she doesn't know them and she's not connected to them. So that's the world. She's cutting into Suri. She's willing to cut into Kirby. That's not good for Parvati. She's working with Luke, who's still not working with Janine. That's it. Is she only investing in the Australians? Like, she had numbers. And
which is wild because she just burned them last time. She was, again.
Yeah, and they're the ones who came back. Yeah, so...
Yeah, so it's. I mean, I guess what Shawnee espouses during that confessional, saying, I know I want to create good content here, but I'm exploring other options. Maybe it is all about just like keeping as many bridges open, because I guess from Shawnee's perspective, how much does she want to go to the end with the 4? I mean, is she seeing that Kirby? Yeah, I mean, again, it doesn't need to be taken care of at the final 9. I agree. Yeah. I mean, this is also the interesting thing about that last vote is like, when you have a 4-3 vote, it's not exactly coming back with a clear majority. And that's really been a lot of the gameplay this season, is that like no votes have resulted in any sort of majority. It's very much something that we're experiencing actually this season on Big Brother, where it's more so just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, vote by vote. It's not even voting blocks. I mean, I guess it is to a certain extent, but as you mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast, even the voting blocks are unstable, where you have Shawnee and Kirby, which you thought were together, sort of breaking apart. Same thing with Parvati and Suri. It's an incredibly individually minded game here. I don't know if it's burgeoned along by the fact that we have this certain quality of players or the fact that they're going to tribal council basically every day just causes them to not necessarily get settled in any sort of routine. But yeah, this came out of nowhere. I mean, I'm as always grateful for the Shanten, especially because I feel like we haven't seen a lot of her in the past couple episodes, really since that George narrative. But I don't know if I want to see this material if she just out of nowhere comes through and says, yeah, remember that thing that everybody liked? I don't like it anymore. Let's take care of Suri right now.
So, because just let me paint the picture. I think we've seen a bit of Shawnee. Like we saw Shawnee and Parvati, but like for Shawnee to make this move now, okay, imagine a world in which that's not what happens. Even if Cass is immune, they go for Lisa. Suri is forced to vote out Lisa. We severed that, and I don't know if anyone realizes what a big connection that is. Tony was like, it was clear Lisa was a fan of Suri, but anyway. Anyone should know that she's a super fan. Of course, she's a fan of. Have you seen Lisa? No one. Does Luke not remember on the season? She mentioned clearly he doesn't. Clearly he doesn't. All right, it's fine. Meant a lot to me too, Luke. But in a world where they take out a world today, then she gets to a place where she's a plurality of 4 with Kirby, who has invested so much in Shawnee. Plurality with the 2 Australians, with Luke and Janine of 8, or with Parvati and Suri with Kirby, and then it becomes Parvati and Suri were willing to turn on Lisa. Parvati's been against Cass or willing to turn against Cass, whoever's immune. And now you're betrayed by them. So then you pick them up. You know, at this point, they're not like fully out the door. They're definitely not out the door with Suri. But at the point where Suri's been forced to vote one of them out because she's on the back foot like Parvati was here, now that's been severed. You've severed something great. And then you have your connection. So then you can say, okay, well, now I can choose. Now I'm with the Australians. Or probably I would choose the Australians over the bigger threats of Parvati and Suri. Then you join with the Worlds. Then I feel like she's in the pound position. But she just cut off all her options here. And I think she gave so much ammo to the other side where they still have so many connections. Like, why will the Worlds choose her over Suri? Are they pissed off enough that the vote didn't go exactly their way, but they're like part of a split where they were actually fine yesterday?
I mean,
Suri can manage
argue
that,
the Worlds just chose Suri over her, considering they did not go aboard with her plan. Of like, look at this. And maybe
exactly.
Shawnee, you can have Suri being like, all right, well, listen, you weren't the only person to write down my name this season, but like, you're one of the only people that's left who did so. So now I have a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The Worlds chose Suri here, and there wasn't enough for them not to choose Suri. At the point where Suri has voted one of them out and been forced to do that, now that's been severed. But that had not happened. So there were enough big connections that Shawnee, it's not cut up enough for you to cut up your own connections, keep your connections, cut up other connections. I feel like Kirby was so important to that. Kirby's like her partner. Kirby's a voting block. Shawnee, what happened? And I just don't understand why she was willing to cut into that. In another world, Shawnee gets voted out. Like in another world, Suri says, oh, we're voting for Kirby, but who said my name? Luke and Shawnee. Kirby did nothing wrong here. Kirby wasn't turning on Suri, you know, but Kirby was turning on Lisa, and that was enough for Suri. But if you tell me that Shawnee's willing to turn on Suri, it's crazy that it didn't go back. Kirby was a juicy enough target. She was a shield. I'm not saying that's not true. But in a world where it's like, but who said my name? Can we work out who said? And then Lisa can go back and say, Luke said it, and he said Shawnee's in. I'm surprised this didn't bounce back on Shawnee immediately. And I think that she's on an island going forward regardless.
How much do you think possibly her last season could have influenced this? Because we look at the same exact spot, the final 9. Shawnee thought she was locked in with a good group, that the Spice Girls were going to make their way to the end together, sit in the final 3. George cuts her legs out from under her, blindsides her with an idol in her pocket. How much does Shawnee feel like she doesn't want to live in a sense of complacency in the end game at this point, and feels like, I mean, again, it's an extreme measure to be like, let me turn on everything we just formed. But is there legs to the idea that there's this sense of paranoia that just had her feeling a bit of PTSD, where she's like, I've got to make sure that there are other options out there, because the more people are not thinking about my name, the more I can protect myself if and when some of my closest people decide to turn on me.
Firstly, this whole season is Survivor PTSD, right? It's like from Ferris, from everyone, and I love all the name dropping that we're getting. Yeah, like it's not that fine a line between complacency and just setting up your next vote. Like you go to the Worlds with nothing really. Like, oh, I want to take out someone you have worked with who, you know, at worst got her way last night over you, but brought you in, and you got your way when Tony went home and brought her in. Like, you guys are in this back and forth where you're working quite well together, actually. Let's take out Suri. Like, we thought the worlds might be amenable to that, but they weren't going to be amenable on Suri. You don't have the leverage there. Like, they actually have the relationship. So to go to them and offer that with nothing, that's nothing, like that's raw dogging that strategy. Whereas I think that if you were to set it up, now Suri has had to turn on you, and like, that's not my fault. Like, I let her vote on you, but we didn't have anything. They betrayed you. Parvati and Suri betrayed you. Now we're cooking with gas. Now those are numbers you can pick up to make your decision when you're working with everyone else. For me, that's like a perfect situation. Here, clearly, no one felt indebted to her, and the people who did, she had many people, she cut them off. Mostly Kirby, Suri, and with that, Parvati. And now, I don't know. To me, it's big movitis. Like, I just think that she's like, life is for living. But sometimes too much living. Sometimes that burns you. Like, sure, that's Shawnee's catchphrase, and it's great. It's so fun. Sometimes we're living a little too much. So I think that's
sometimes you
what
take
happen.
Sometimes you need a quiet weekend of home. You don't need to go jet setting, extreme stunts, jumping off of bridges every other day.
Sometimes life is not for living. Sometimes life is for sleeping. Sometimes life is for resting. That's also very important. So I'd love to hear from Shawnee what it was. And I don't want to, I hate just like discarding because I don't get it. Maybe I don't get it, but I really
for all we know, something could have happened that turned her off to Suri. Maybe the two of them. Again, we talked about the Rachel, the Phoebe and Chandler, Elaine and George situation where like they have been brought in by each other's closest allies, but it's like the two of them just aren't connecting as well. So maybe Shawnee specifically wanted Suri out.
She was willing to turn on, like, she says they're going to turn. Luke goes to them. Shawnee's not part of that conversation. And then goes Kirby or maybe Suri. I feel like she went in saying, yeah, Kirby, or I guess Suri. I feel like Luke turned it on to Suri. I think she was going for Kirby. She wasn't doing it with Kirby. She wasn't doing it with Parvati.
Yeah. I want to give kudos to Luke as well. I know that obviously this does not work out. And
that feels crazy.
I feel like yet again he's left out of the vote, but I do think that the idea, at least, of seeding this connection with the three worlds is going to pay off in dividends. I think we can talk about what the landscape looks like next time, if and when the world tribe splits apart. Like, I think it does help to have at least try to have some sort of working relationship with them. Again, they have nothing to go off of because they actively betrayed Luke and Shawnee this time. But again, I do think on paper, Luke and Janine really divining and conquering here. I mean, they did technically conquer. Yes, the momentum was sort of building from different perspectives towards Suri and the worlds to feel very leery of Kirby. But, Janine being the straw to stir the juice cup, as it were, and Luke very clearly trying to make some connections with them and then just saying, the wrong name at the wrong time. I do think this tactic is going to pay off, despite the fact that Luke is 0 for 4 and actually voting people out. I think that it's something that could pay off successfully for what they're attempting to do at the end of the day. That these three world people are like honestly the biggest X factors in this entire game, not only from a notoriety perspective, but just like they are a block of three. And really, it seems like outside of Lisa's allegiance to Suri, they are free agents completely. And I think they both did a good job of sensing that and trying to pick up the pieces in that moment.
I don't think they're free agents. I think that Suri is important. I think that's a 4, and now Suri's bringing other people, and I think that's where the power lies for me, because I think that Suri and Lisa are so important. I think that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, for Luke, look, it's not the right name. Again, that's like the difference in the pitches, right? Like, not the pitches of Juice, like the actual pitches that, if he'd given Kirby, that would be perfect. Like, they're so down with Kirby, so that would have been great. He pushes his leverage that he doesn't have to give Suri, which is the wrong read, and Janine gives the right pitch, and that's why she conquers while they divide.
Yep.
I hope that Luke votes correctly at a point. I do count the split.
Even if he's on the jury, hopefully he'll won't be left in the minority and vote for a runner-up.
This is becoming like flick levels of, incorrect voting. But I will say, how like some things just get like added to my lexicon, help me Paul being the biggest one.
Yes.
Curbs got toasted, goddamn. Where can I fit that in? Curbs got toasted, goddamn is my favorite thing ever. The Where do I put that? What's the situation where I can
I
use
think
that as a
you
phrase?
name every single piece of bread you have in your bread box Kirby. And so whenever you have a nice little
Curves.
breakfast shape, say, "Oh, Curbs got posted. God damn."
Yeah, but I don't eat a lot of toast. But I could start.
You have to
I could
start.
really
You have
start
to make that
because
sacrifice, Shannon.
I don't know. I kind of think if it's like, like if my mom like loses at Wordle and she texts me like I failed Wordle, I'll be like, Curbs got toasted. Goddamn. She'd be like, Are you okay? I'll be like, clearly
Or
never.
it can sort of be that meme of like when someone has like a really scathing one-liner that dresses someone down. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Curbs got toasted. Goddamn!" Like obviously
Yeah.
Kirby is not one of the parties involved, but it's more so as a reference.
Yeah. I want to use it. I want that to be a thing. But a couple of things I want to say before we get to the chizzy. The season is so good. I just want to say, like, I don't know
That's
if
what
it's
you
like
want to
it's so
say? We've never
yeah.
mentioned this in 6 episodes of coverage, so I'm so glad you're bringing this new piece of information to light.
It's been 20 minutes since I mentioned how good the season is. I went to a viewing party tonight for the Merge episode.
Mhm.
Third time I watched that episode, and I was like, damn, it's even better the third time. I love it so much. It's so good. Like, it's so funny. Like, there's so many good one-liners. Everyone's on song, and everyone's so entertaining. The line where Luke's like, "We'll go for a walk, Parvati, but leave the machete." She's like, "It's fine. I can kill you with your bare hands." Like everyone with my bare hands.
So
Everyone's
good.
great. Even I screwed it up, but she's great. It's so good. The season is so good. And as I said at the top of the podcast, like we kind of wondered 14 people, 16 days, like, is this a win? But it felt like it feels like then it's only gonna keep going, but it's felt like a lot. So I think yes. And another thing I want to say, I think these two episodes were both sublime. I think the whole thing's been. I think episode 4 was a bit of a low point, to be honest. But I think overall, I'm having the most wonderful time. And also JLP, like JLP's always great, but his chemistry with this cast and the JLP
Oh,
laugh is out in full force. He's like, it's painful how good he is. Like this
yeah.
would be like if you had to like break up with a boyfriend for like reasons outside of your control, and that this was like the best relationship it ever been. That's how I feel. And he's always good. But
He's
like it's so
so
good.
freaking
It's
good. I
so
mean, it's
good.
it's
So
it's
good.
weird because it's like it's going out on top, even though he didn't realize that he was on top, And I don't know. I think JLP strikes me as someone who would always be on top. But
Dear
regardless,
God, Mike. Dear God in
no, so I'm
heaven.
not. I don't know.
Children listen to this in the backs of cars,
Do
I
they?
think.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
heard that
hopefully
tonight.
I'll go buy a Boost Juice, kids. Hopefully all of our in-house
Sorry,
marketing
Ellie.
has got to you. But I
Yeah.
do think that it's interesting because you look at, and this is obviously not the first returning season that AU has ever done, but like looking at how Jeff can sometimes regard, like especially the All Stars contestants, like they were very colloquial, but almost they were too colloquial, as Jeff has reflected in the past about how like they're almost taking advantage of him. Now there is this sort of like reverence for him. I think JLP has sort of hit this happy medium where like he's not looked upon as necessarily like this paragon, this untouchable god of Survivor, but at the same time, like he is very chummy with them. Even again, the people he had not met before in Parvati, in Suri. I love the reactions that he's been giving. I love in the banter. Listen, when's going to be Survivor Flim Flam versus Hoodwinked versus Bamboozled? When is that coming?
Yeah.
That's going to be the season after the one that's coming up, Redemption. So I absolutely just love the chemistry that he has. It truly is like a reflection again of like, as you and I have talked about, how much he has grown into this role over the course of 10 seasons, how comfortable he has become with his own hosting to the point where he can not only have this camaraderie with the people that he's interacted with time and time again, but also these brand new people too. Like it just showcases what a stellar MC this guy is. And obviously it is incredibly depressing that we're now looking at the last 4 episodes that we'll get from him of Australian Survivor. But it's such an enjoyable time. And you could tell, especially, he is really enjoying himself out there. Like, to go back to your first brand new statement, this is such fantastic television. Like the
Have we mentioned
only
that?
the only sticking point I would have is like, sucks that Tommy's under edited. But you talked about this before in terms of expectations. That's Australian Survivor. There's always going to be like 1 or 2 random people who are going to get completely under edited, even if there's 8 people left. But we enjoy those small, sparse moments like we got of Tommy in the Merge episode. But otherwise, I completely agree. Everyone is absolutely delivering. The strategy is incredibly unpredictable. This is not an exhibition match. And this goes to prove, in my opinion, that the day count kind of means bupkis in terms of the argument of like, what is true Survivor? What are we putting an asterisk on? You could argue that like, okay, is the new era different from the old era because of like all the twists and now it become rote structure? Yes, I totally agree with that. But like a 16-day season is slapping pretty damn hard. It doesn't matter how many days you play. What matters is what you do with that limited number of days. And from what we have been seeing so far, these players have been doing with 16 what some players have not been able to do with 50.
Yeah, firstly, I know and love Tommy. I actually think it has been even. I have a sense of all of these players, which I should because there were very few players. If you can't do that, we have concerns. Janina's had more now. Like, I do have a sense of all of these players, I think. And I would also say, like, I don't really care about days, but I care a lot about votes. And that's one of my least favorite things about the new era is, like, there'll be a disaster tribe. So, like, sometimes the winner, like, doesn't have a lot of, like, pre-merge votes. And then there's, like, a split tribal, and then they're not part of it. I'm like, no, I want to see them be tested. And so what? So anyone who wins the season will go to 2 pre-merge tribal councils and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 9 tribal councils. That's not bad. There are winners in the US in 39 days who have been to fewer than that.
I was going to say, Michelle Fitzgerald went to what, like 8 or 9 maybe in Ko-Rong?
I think fewer.
Yeah.
I think fewer than that. And
because of all the medevacs. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So
I should also say, speaking of history, this is a bit of a tangent, but what do you make of again, I don't want to see from a personal perspective Suri keep racking up votes because that means she's in danger, but I am obsessed I'm obsessed with how pissed off she is about it. Like the fact that she gets the first vote, she's like, sure, yeah. You know what? Why not at this point? And then her being pissed off at Luke's Starbucks cup-esque spelling of Suri.
Juice. Come on, Mike.
Sorry. Should be noted that Suri has received 4 votes so far in AU versus the World. That is nearly half the number of votes she has received in all 4 seasons she played in the US so far before Survivor. She got 9 votes in her first 4 seasons. She has now received 4. I don't know. She could be on her way to getting as many, if not more, votes in one singular season as her previous 4 seasons combined. That is wild to me.
Hey, Michelle Fitzgerald went to 6 tribal councils. I knew it was a lot fewer than that. Now I'm looking up Tom because these are the stats we always pull up. And also, you think I'm not thinking about Suri's votes all the time? That she got 4 votes in these 4 tribal councils that she's been to and 9 in 4 seasons before that. These Australians are rude. I see why she doesn't like people from Australia or things.
I mean, listen, I didn't listen to the merge recap yet, but she has an axe to grind against certain Australians. Bowie Jane did not necessarily invite the warmest reputation to the entire country when she lived 75 days with her.
I do love the idea that she's referring to Bowie Jane. Like that deep cut reference that makes sense and that I didn't think about is crazy. Let's talk more about Suri. Let's talk about the Shizzy. Take it away, Jacob Sager Weinstein and MC Color.
1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. It's getting kind of chizzy. 3, 2, 1.
Why is it? It's so hard to count Tom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 for Tom.
Yeah, because it was just the final 2, so it was So it's listen again. These people are putting in the work with the limited number of tribal councils that we have. I guess we can assume now with them merging at 10, starting the jury, then it's probably going to be final 3 with a 7-person jury. I still feel like before we get into the Chizzy, actually, I apologize for keep going off on tangents, but got to be me. What do you think Cass's scroll is? Like that was so odd that it's like, hey, you won immunity. Here's a scroll. Don't read it until after the vote. I mean, I guess it makes sense because, provided she doesn't do an Eric or a Brandon Hands, she is going to be the only person guaranteed to open that scroll the next day. But kind of odd that she would open it then instead of just like having it come in tree mail,
Well, that's what like Eva got, right?
I mean, Eva got more so a like, hey, sneak away to the camp and get an advantage. But it wasn't like she was told, hey, read this this wasn't public knowledge. It wasn't like, hey, here's you won immunity, so here's this thing that you can take later on. It was more so this was the case of, hey, open this tomorrow. And I think that means that it's something for everyone. It's not, hey, Cass, you have this power to do this. I would imagine that maybe it's like they announced like a double elimination or something. I was going
to say, well, you talked about how it has to be a final 3. That doesn't even make sense because you would think that they would want 4 people in the finale for a final 3. That's usually what Australian Survivor does. They're not US style with the 2 boots and fire and everything, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
So if they need that, then they need a double boot in the next 3 episodes, if my math is correct. And I was kind of hoping what they would do is kind of heroes versus villains style, what they did in what was it, the Candace Danielle boots? Like if they have a long 70-minute
Like, yeah, put
episode,
two boots in one episode.
yeah,
Yeah.
just do 2 rounds, which would be crazy to talk about. I would prefer that, especially in a long episode, than whatever a double boot will be. But I guess it could be a double boot. I wouldn't like that. I don't trust production because I didn't love the one twist they put into this season.
Again, and that's the thing why I've mentioned before, I would much rather do a double boot in the pre-merge when it's just
You're
a much
right.
more clean and easy method of both tribes go to tribal council than whatever they have cooked up here. I mean, for what it's worth, again, we're sort of running out of days. Maybe they do something where like it's a 1-day round where the scroll is, hey, there's no immunity challenge. You know, everyone is vulnerable. Please proceed to tribal council. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200 JLP dollars. I'm not
They love the
entirely sure.
challenges.
That's
Maybe
true,
for
but
some
like,
reason.
there's only so many they can squeeze in here. We're really losing out on the calendar right now, which again is a disadvantage of the number of days here, and they still have to vote out 6 people, presumably in 4 episodes. So, yeah, I
5
think that
people.
oh yeah, because they have 8 left. They have 8 left. You're right. So yeah, so I think
So they've got days. What day are they on? 10? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? They
yes.
just can't vote one out every day. They just vote one out every day, Mike.
I
Don't you
mean, that's
know?
listen, we watched Survivor South Africa Champions where they basically did that towards the end game. So if they thought this was high octane going into this, it's gonna get kicked up into like double, triple speed.
Yeah, but that would make sense. Then you do a 2-day episode, but it's like 2
Mhm.
rounds. I think that works. We don't know.
Yeah, because
We don't
we
know.
also have like we have like hour and a half long episodes. So I think
Yeah.
if there it was a time to squeeze 2 boots into one episode, especially if you feel like, to your point, if it feels a little bit more road, if for some reason like one of these quote unquote sides is cleanly picking off the other, this could be an easy way to do it.
Which is absolutely not what's happening in this season. Also, this was like the first shorter episode, and I was not happy. Do not deprive me of my time with my favorite thing ever. I want every minute of it. Anyway, my cheesy points. I will give 3 points to Sari, racking up the cheesy points and racking up the votes at the same time. I feel like this helps her a lot. This gets back her investment in the worlds that she had to sacrifice a bit yesterday, and something I thought was better for Parvati. She gets it back. She manages it so well, and it is duly orchestrated by her and Janine. I'm giving 2 points to Janine, who I think orchestrates it most and gives the name, and it's a good name, and is obviously in a better spot for it. But I still feel like the focal point is like Sari and the worlds, and so I'm giving kind of Sari that emphasis of the points just structurally, even though they both do a great job here. I'll give a point to Lisa. Again, like Sari and Lisa's relationship is this whole thing. Like they have this protection that I think is so important. I think this is so good for the worlds. Tommy, again, we're not seeing as much of, even though I think I am getting a sense of Tommy, and I love Tommy. And then Cass also has the target, which isn't as good. So I'm giving that point to Lisa, and I think her connection with Sari is so important. And those are my points. Mike, what are your points?
I'm not going to deviate too much from what you've laid out. Unlike a lot of people in this episode, we are going to do what they did, and we are sticking to the rules of a common sense here. I'll also give 1 point to Lisa because I think, she was, at least from our perspective, instrumental in making sure that Suri vote didn't go through. She got what she wanted. And also, it should be said that when Suri approaches Lisa and Cass about, hey, do we go for the Janine plan here? Cass is like, no, it's too risky. She could be tricking us. And Lisa is the one to say, no, this makes more sense. Let's go with it, which was, I think, the correct move. So I will give Lisa 1 point here. I will give Sari 2 points for all the reasons that you mentioned. I think she was yet another very key vote here. And the fact that it really seems like she won out in this vote. And again, kind of like forcing Parvati to vote out somebody who very clearly was going to be tied with her for the entirety of the game if she could help it. Really helped. And maybe something out of the Kirby playbook could have helped bring Parvati closer to her as well, even if it is a bit guilty by association, plus help forge this connection with my 3-pointer for this episode. It's got to be Janine. Maybe it is, again, a bit of just exceeding expectations given the way she's been edited so far, but clearly compared to Luke, she was much more successful side of the divide and conquer mission. She got in so well with Sari. She got in well with Parvati too. I think she really made herself appealing as an individual agent of someone that this group could work with moving forward. And I think that does nothing if not help her stock. I mean, again, much like Luke, she was coming into this episode having voted either in the minority or out of the loop every single vote up to this point. Now it seems like she has hit the vein. She has been able to finally get on the same page as a lot of these other parties. And I am, again, incredibly impressed by the godmother here. So a late surge by Janina. I know she got a couple points from the last time you and I spoke, but I feel like, as Kirby fell, she rose here as a new power player.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we are partners who aren't misaligned.
Like so.
Everyone on the season, which is the theme. So we are in sync there. If you want to give Chizzy points to JLP, if I know we have players listening, bid on the Chizzy. If you win, you can give yourself Chizzy points, right?
Oh,
that could be the difference.
Love that. That is such a great idea. If you felt you were robbed of the Chizzy accolades that you deserve, be the Chizzy you wish to see in the world. Go bid. Be able to give yourself points. It's expected. We put the motto out there. It's not too self-serving to give yourself points now that the idea has been put out there. Donate to a good cause while also giving yourself a well-deserved pat on the back. What's to go wrong?
Yeah, so Forever After Rescue, incredible cause. I know that they're excited about this as well. So thank you to everyone who's donated. Remember to keep donating to this amazing cause, helping cats and winning Chizzy points. So players, stands, anyone I've angered with my points, don't complain to me. Do you want to know what my pet peeve is? And they're not listening, so it doesn't matter. Sometimes like Rob's fact checker will put out the Chizzy charts and people will be like, why are these points? And I'll be like, it's in the podcast. Like, disagree with the podcast, but they don't not listen to the podcast and then get mad about it.
Are you telling me the internet doesn't understand a visualization, Shannon? That has never happened in the course of human history.
It's just like, listen to the podcast, then disagree all you want, and then donate, and then give your own Chizzy, sure. But don't be like, why does this? I'm like, there's actually a lot of hours of content to explain why. We at least thought about it. Really, really irritates me. Tangent. Donate for the Chizzy. I'll talk about what I have coming up. I'll think about it off the top of my head because for some reason I don't write it down. I had all the 3 recaps. All the recap bitches. All fun. Chappelle, Puya, Mike. I'll have a show with Rob. All 3 X interviews this week. I'll be speaking to Sarah and Kirby. The Sarah interview should be out when this is out. Kirby will come as well. Tony was a delight. I don't know if you haven't listened to that. Definitely do it. I really recommend it because it was the highlight of my life.
So, would you recommend listening to it or watching it, especially?
Watching.
I think people need to see the smile that could not be wiped off your face the entire time.
What it was is that I couldn't sleep all night. It was like early in the morning. Not early. It was early for me. It was like first thing in the morning for me, but I couldn't sleep. And then I got there 10 minutes early, and then they got there 3 minutes late. So for 13 minutes, my heart is pounding. I'm like, just please get on the call. I can't take this anymore. So there's
a fair chance that by the time Tony came on, you could have been dead from a heart attack.
Literally, it was so concerning. Peter's like, I can hear your voice shaking, and
oh my god.
Yeah, it was just waiting the whole time. Imagine if they did get on the call and I'm just straight up dead. It could have happened. It definitely. And the funny thing is that
is she okay? Is this a bit?
Well, Rob texted me. He was like, how was the Tony interview? I'm like, I really recommend watching it. It was really fun. It was a lot. And he's like, well, Tony only has 1 speed. I'm like, Tony was chill. I was game changer Tony times 50. So I loved that. And that's what I have going on. Thank you to everyone who's listening. Mike, tell the people what you have going on.
I've got a lot happening because, not to upstage all the grandeur that's coming with AU versus the world, they released a whole ass other Survivor cast. Last week, the cast of Survivor 49 has arrived, and I am, as always, very fortunate to be your one-stop shop for all things in the pre-season. So every day I am putting out an interview with one of the contestants of Survivor 49. I've got them in written form at parade.com. I've got them in podcast form and video form on Rob Has a Podcast Proper. Rob and I are also getting together after each tribe to talk about our thoughts on the overall group, prognosticating how they're going to do in those initial stages of the game. So yeah, if you want more Survivor in your life, there's plenty going on here on RHAP and Parade, also covering Big Brother 2, the Reality Flash. Whenever something's popping up in reality TV news, I'm your eyes and ears there. But you can check out anything and everything I'm doing at a Mike Bloom Type.
Follow me at Shannon Gates, WeKnowGlobalSurvivor.com to subscribe to all of this. Donate to the Chizzy raffle. This could be your time. This could be your ticket. Again, it's very cheap for Americans and also pretty cheap for Australians. It's a good deal, I think. $10, 10 Australian dollars for one ticket, 25 for three. Often people ask me, like, how can I support the podcast? We appreciate the patrons also, but do this. I want to help this amazing cause and help some cats. So thank you all. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. I will see you next time. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.